Kaya. Kaya. Nganang kwel Kylie. Kylie Yirra Yaakin boomerang. Kylie boomerang. Kaya karich. Ngan Yirra Yaakin nija karakul buja. Ngan court bakat bakarijan balap brian nija bujarang. Kuralang. Nija buja ngan court kwabakin nganang marang ba mawat parang kuralang. Yay ngan Yirra Yaakin wang in Shakespeare. Kaya no nakarin Shakespeare ana. It's a pleasure to be here on Karikal Buja, the place where actually I started my family. Lived here for close to a decade and I have some family in the audience. Thank you for being here. And for those of you joining us online, weren't able to be here in real time, thank you for tuning in. 2024 Shakespeare Memorial Lecture, presented by Kylie Bracknell. Who is Kylie Bracknell? I think we all go through life being a version of ourselves in a moment. So even this image I look at and I don't know her anymore. But the connection's still strong. And the pride is still there. Thank you to those who make this event possible and have invited me here to share a wonderful journey, to share a beginning of that with you guys. There's not enough time to delve into the complete depth of the magic felt and seeded and harvested continually till now. So I hope that this will open your hearts, your mind, your eyes into a special event that took place on this continent a short while ago. Hecate is the first adaptation of a complete Shakespeare play in one Aboriginal language of Australia, a landmark work of both theatre and language restoration. And I still pinch myself that I am the adapter of that work, the co-translator and the director of that original production. Pinch myself a lot. I would like to learn with you guys and share with you information about the location of this language, the Noongar language, my mother tongue. The Noongar region was the first area impacted when the British claimed Western Australia in 1829. Over the past 2 centuries, Noongar families have been marked by experiences of frontier violence, followed by rigorous government policies of segregation and cultural assimilation. Noongar vocabulary has nevertheless been co-opted into Australian English vernacular, courtesy of official place names. And if any of you have been to WA or read information about the southwest of WA, you would have read or heard about the word Jarrah or Quokka, or place names such as York or Coolbellup. As a result, many people in the south of Western Australia regularly employ a smattering of Noongar in everyday speech, although the language is rarely heard strung together in full sentences. Increased public acknowledgement of Noongar culture and language in recent decades masks the fact that Noongar remain the poorest and most incarcerated people in our own homelands, now one of the wealthiest places on earth. I cannot talk about Shakespearean Noongar without talking about where I come from and where this vibration of communication comes from. So Noongar of the southwest of Western Australia constitute one of Australia's largest Aboriginal cultural blocks, both in terms of population and vast estate of lands and waters, which includes the capital city of Perth, my hometown, the city of Albany, my co-author and co-translator's hometown, and the town of Esperance, my in-laws' country, my son's country. Although Noongar language is clearly visible across education and the arts today, it is nevertheless still emerging from the devastation of an unjust settler colonial history. The International Decade of Indigenous Languages, which we're in now, 2022 to 2032, began amid increasing engagement with us, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and our languages across Australia. As a pronounced example, the Australian census recorded a 200% surge in people identifying as speakers of the Noongar language between 2016 and 2021, increasing from approximately 475 people to 1,536 people. Although this census data does not indicate anything about the frequency and fluency of language use, it combines the sustained language revitalisation efforts since the 1980s to reflect the importance of language to Noongar identity. Now, you may or may not know that the Noongar Shakespeare project took between 8 to 10 years to get Hecate to the World Stage in 2020. So we're pretty proud of the fact that, well, we like to think we had a big part in that surge. I want to share with you a watercolour piece from circa 1843 from Noongar Budja, Richard Atherton Farrington, recorded the natural world of Western Australia and its Indigenous inhabitants, my ancestors, while serving with the 51st Regiment in Western Australia between 1843 to 1847. His sketches and watercolours include competent scenes of the coast, but of far more importance are his drawing and watercolours of the daily activities of the local Aboriginal people. I don't know if he was related to Shakespeare, but he's from the same country. This artist successfully depicted a corroboree, clearly set at night in a convincing landscape, unlike other versions of his popular subject, and both mysterious and animated in mood. It's a beautiful interpretation, adaptation, a representation in watercolour of the Noongar people. Cross-cultural dialogue, traditional ceremony, performance, wonderful stage lighting, one country, great wardrobe department. All the world's a stage, right? But here we have Noongar people depicting what they saw when those settlers came in. Here's an image from Hecate, the production. Let me just flick back. Let me just flick forward. Do you know when I put this together last night, because I'm always flying by the seat of my pants at the moment with a 6-year-old on school holidays, just finished. There's so much correlation between the two. Macbeth is a dark piece. And in our version, when I directed it, I wanted to really speak to the multi-layered history of everything that Shakespeare celebrated inside his work, this dark work, this thankfully one of the lowest word count of his works. But for us here, it speaks to that early settlement. This is a scene from Macbeth where his mob, Macbeth's, are sent out to murder Macduff's mob, the family. In my production, I didn't want to have weapons. I chose not to because it is not weapons that murder people, it is the people holding the weapons that do that. So in the silhouette, you will see just the human and the hand, but no weapon. But the image in itself speaks to so much. I don't think the extent of the English language could really describe how powerful this was to our audience watching this. But before premiering Hecate, to the world at Perth Festival in 2020, I think when this very building was opened that year. I led Yirra Yaakin Theatre Company's presentation of 6 Shakespearean sonnets in Noongar language at the Globe to Globe Festival 8 years prior in 2012. Still pinching myself. That was part of the World Shakespeare Festival for the London 2012 festival, which was the culmination of the Cultural Olympiad. We look solid standing there on the Globe stage. Anyone would think we're experts in Shakespeare. Not so much, but we're getting there. We're thespians, nevertheless we love his work. Kyle J. Morrison planted the seed for the Noongar Shakespeare project, and he travelled a very lonely journey in the beginning because people weren't sure why he wanted to do that. I think at this point I might share one of the sonnets in Noongar. Would you like to hear one of those? This is one that was not shared in London or anywhere. This is actually a new one. It's in the book, and it grew from one of Clint and mine's nieces doing her degree at WAPA in acting, and her lecturers wanting her to do a sonnet in Noongar because she's Noongar. And we quickly explained to her that she should probably feed back that Noongar is only spoken by 2% of the community and she is not one of that 2% yet. Nevertheless, we translated this, and she used a lot of courage to share it, as am I going to try to attempt to do right now. So this is sonnet 146 in Noongar. Winyan kurdamit kart wirni chapnin yuran ngaich nganang kurdamit bakich nach nyuna wayan ken kurt yuran ken pamapak wilki nabin wirnich nach pundong bula dordak kuratnin kurt noich bin yarn yirang itchabam ninat nija Dach bidirabin. Balam ngaran buruan. Dachich nuechang. Yay kurdamit nyunang kurt kwabul wort. Buda balang naka. Wankin kwap ngarn. Kuranap kul. Kwechabin dordakburt. Kurdamit murat merinburt winyan. Kaya noicak ngarn, bau nyungar bakan, noicich noich, kaban barang dordakan. Sonnet 146. You guys can look that up in Shakespearean text. It was an absolute pleasure to share our language, or as our editor, Dr. Roma Yibayang Winmar, said, we took our mother tongue back to the motherland. And I will say that Gross and Klein was also performing, Sydney Theatre Company presented that there at the same time. And I have this wonderful memory of attending the Australian High Commission's space in London the evening of this performance and having Kate Blanchett say to me, "How was it? How was it being on that stage?" This was monumental for us to take our language there. We then took it back home to Buja, Noongar Buja, on the banks of the Jabal Yirragan, also pronounced Durbal Yirragan, the Swan River, for Perth Festival in 2013. A sea of people hearing this language sung for the very first time. Uncle William, that's what we sometimes call him. We can claim to. Shakespeare's work is so enshrined in global popular culture that Macbeth has been adapted and presented in various non-European cultural and linguistic context, particularly in Akira Kurosawa's samurai film Throne of Blood in 1957. Hecate is also not alone in its mobilisation of Shakespeare to bolster Indigenous language revitalisation. The Māori language film Te Tangata Wai Rawa o Weniti, 2002, was based on a translation of Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Maybe they call him Uncle William too, I don't know. For many Noongar people, however, Shakespeare is symbolic of imposed settler colonial ideas about high culture and, indirectly, the suppression of Noongar language. Ironically, engaging with something as canonically English as Shakespeare was crucial to Hecate's success as an act of language revitalisation. So we use this opportunity to adapt and translate Macbeth as an activity to enrich revitalisation of language and culture, like finding words which had fallen out of use. See, Shakespeare took words that were coming up in his town, in his city, in his area, and he quickly put it into his plays because it was pop culture. And so for us, finding words that had fallen out of use and bringing them back is kind of similar. Makes me happy to find that link. Revising understandings of Noongar grammar. An activity to also re-establish a community of language speakers through training performers in their mother tongue, one of the most powerful parts of this journey. Raising the esteem of Aboriginal languages among monolingual Australians who know and revere Shakespeare, but are ignorant of our languages. So what you're seeing here on the screen is some records by Daisy Bates, who was an ethnographer and journalist on our Budja in early 1900s, and von Brandenstein, an anthropologist and linguist who was active around the 1970s. So we created a brave space. The Hecate Company frequently participated in challenging dialogue. They're working with me, so that's going to happen. Took risks to enable more authentic conversations and, when necessary, sit with the discomfort. These kinds of practices required a brave space. We created that. Simple definition of a brave space is a space where we can sit with discomfort but can also look after each other's well-being. While the intent is still always that participants remain physically and emotionally unharmed, brave spaces allow for growth and development in ways that safe spaces may inhibit. Learning one's endangered language is an act of bravery, especially in the context of performing arts, particularly with something so revered as Shakespeare. How about that expression? You want to caption that? So that's Kyle J. Morrison, whose bright idea it was to do a full Shakespeare play all in Noongar language. As part of his agenda as the artistic director of Yirra Yaakin Theatre Company, Kyle J. Morrison devised the original idea to present a Shakespearean work in Noongar language in 2009. The Noongar language has been dramatically impacted by colonisation since the early 1800s and was actively suppressed until the 1970s. I like to caption this one as, that's his first cousin there, so their parents are siblings. Kyle's father and Della's, who played Hecate, her mother. Close mob. I like to caption this as Della whispering to him, "See, big shot, you want to do Shakespeare in Noongar?" He's like, "We've got a job ahead of us." Describing people's lives before British invasion, the late, great Noongar statesman Ken Colbong explains, they existed when there was no necessity for any name. They were the good, the enlightened people. They were the people who know about the laws of nature and the laws of the spirit. They built a great civilization, a great culture, and a unique social order. This knowing of how things were prior to invasion on our homelands inspired me deeply to focus on the Queen of the Witches, Hecate, Hecate. We went with the Ocker version, Hecate, because we didn't want to summon her. The very character usually omitted from most productions of Macbeth. So through Hecate, I wanted to honour the old ways of connection to Budja, Mother Earth, and how we must drastically change or revert our thoughts of Budja before it's too late for us all. Budja bawankin, mamangara yokangara karin. Balabwangin ye budawan noich ba, you really war billy 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 kurlin. Budja bawangin. Throughout Hecate's workshop and rehearsal phases, Clint Bracknell, aka Marikij, developed 4 key Noongar language songs for the production, inspired by reinterpreted Shakespearean text and the musical and poetic conventions of Noongar song. You see, in our time we sang just as much as we spoke. As we're raised on our Budja today, we're taught to mean what we say and say what we mean. If you haven't got anything nice to say, keep quiet. They say some other words, but they're a bit rude. To the tune of keep your mouth shut. The song that I just sang for you guys was text that I actually pasted into the Hecate adaptation. It's actually Jacques' dialogue from As You Like It. All the world's a stage. And all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Who wants to give the song a crack? Budja balwankin, mamangara yokangara karin. Balabwangin ye budawan noich ba, you billy ward biddy 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 kurlin. Budja balwangin. Our version of Macbeth was never going to be just text. It wouldn't honour our language, it wouldn't honour our ancient frequency of communication and connection to story and to place and to people and to all living things. Most of these images are in the book. You can take them home if you like a bit later. World Shakespeare effectively supported the Noongar creative team in realising a collective Noongar vision for Macbeth rather than asserting control. Bell's artistic director Peter Evans saw Hecate as vital to the company's remit to present Shakespeare in ways that had never been done before, preventing it from being stuck in the past and reorienting it as a lens through which we can explore and question the present and image of our future. Hecate dramaturg, Quabarak York with the glasses on, sitting next to me, Kate Mulvaney, urged me to be bold, to be brave. That was done in the adaptation and in all aspects of the journey to get the team to where we got to. The dagger scene. Here's an excerpt from the script in the book. Dapwa nganang maral dap marinjino yualku ngaich parang ngaich dap ken dap jinangin. I still don't really know how we did this. Do you feel dizzy when you're looking at these 3 lines of text? I mean, we have the Noongar, we have the Noonglish, I call it, Noonglish, and the Shakespearean text. So much time to double check everything, so much time to work through the reverence and the respect and the accuracy, thinking backward, thinking forward. Maitland Schnars describes his experiences coming into the workshop, and this is the actor that would play Macbeth. I had no Noongar language experience at all. There's always words which everyone knows, Noongar words, stuff like that. The biggest thing I had to confront when I started learning it, I knew I'd have issues with regards to the white institutions and anger against them for taking away my language. But what surprised me that I didn't expect was anger towards my family. I was hit with this anger like, why did Kylie's family keep language and mine didn't? I had to realise that it was a different time back then, and they did what they thought was best for the family. It wasn't them. They shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place where they had to give up language. But yeah, it was a challenge, because when you're younger, it's easier to learn language. It's hard and more challenging when you're older. That's just a snippet into some of his thoughts. In the book, you'll find we've interviewed the majority of the team and they give their words to the experience. We wanted this historical document to include as many of our team's voices as possible. So now I'm going to share some images with you and go off script a little bit and give you some of the feelings of what I see connected to these people in this place. Here we have Mark Nanup, who graduated down in VCA in Melbourne, Noongar man, had also never performed in Noongar at all, with Trevor Ryan, who would be his on-stage father. So Mark played Malcolm and Trevor played King Duncan. Trevor, one of the original Sonnet in Noongar team, as you would have saw in the earlier photo on the Globe stage with us. We're outside rehearsing. Lady and Mac. Bobby Henry, Maitland Schnars. Striking, brave, courageous. So courageous. They both had to strengthen ever so deeply their connection to Noongar Dar to play these characters. We spent a lot of time out on country so they could absorb that and feel the power of Budja while using our native tongue, our mother tongue. There was fun. We had to have that. We're a traumatised people. We suffer from the trauma of language loss. We need to rebuild here. Inside this room, and you might see the paper on the walls behind Reuben Yorkshire in the middle, who played Banquo. There were quotes every day that we would share in those circles to reinforce that brave space, to lift everyone's spirits and remind them of who they are, where they come from, the ancestors that they're connected to that you saw in that early watercolour. And then we'd go back out again, draw on that power. watch each other, guide each other, love each other, support each other, learn from each other and share, bond and connect, like all the fantastic ensembles do. Cesara Critchy Schnaz, the daughter of Maitland Schnaz, who played Macbeth, was one of the final members cast. Also, not a word of Noongar language inside her vessel until being a part of this journey. And playing Fleance, who I adapted as a daughter, because I wanted Fleance to receive and inherit the responsibility of spiritual caretaking to country that Hecate was responsible for. Because in our version, she wasn't queen of the witches, as in an old hag. She was the queen of order, of spirituality, to the feminine, to our life giver, to our Mother Earth, passed down to a female generation member. So it was a bit different in our version when Macbeth, in all his power and greed in his mind, was sent out to kill Banquo and his daughter rather than his son. So Hecate is guiding her. Is that a double up I see? It is. Just to show how long this process took in an image. It takes 9 months to bake a human baby. And I think Avery might be 9 months on from there, I'm not sure. Mum's at work. The cropping of these images doesn't show how the vocabulary has grown with the team. So I would do an exercise with them to write Noongar words on the board, get them to translate. Then we did it every time we got together. I also enforced a no English hour in the rehearsal room. It was very quiet for that first hour. As time passed and everyone healed and celebrated and tried and got past the fear of failing, they shone a lot. And then the piece was gone. It was difficult for the cast, though, to get past the intellectual and emotional challenges to speak and perform in Noongar language. Clint did write those 4 songs. And singing them with the cast, the group singing helped guard against shame. And singing assisted in awareness of pronunciation and rhythms in Noongar language. Learning a song was an achievement, achievable early goal that lifted everyone's confidence. Embodying these intrinsically Noongar songs provided a sense of accomplishment and a feeling of connection and continuity with Noongar singers of the past. Even long after the production closed, many of the cast still sing the songs today. Senior language speakers visited the cast regularly, which aided morale and and gave cultural validation to the entire process. Here we have Judy Jertang Bone in the middle, Janine Oxenham on that side, our movement director, and Cesara again. Actors had to retrain their English language theatre voice projection techniques. So the main obstacles for the actors included articulating ert. A lot of this information is in the book that you can read. There are sounds that are not found in Noongar language, but that are characteristic of Australian English. So there was a big shift that needed to happen. And we got there. Just before I finish, I want to share with you something really important to Hecate in the process. Cumbernauld was a meeting place. This venue where we developed the work, did a lot of the workshops and reclamation of language with our would-be cast. We spent time outside on country a lot. At the bottom of this image, you'll see a small smoking circle. These language revitalisation activities can trigger trauma over issues associated with language loss, and we needed to have this healing place. Maintaining a place to meet, share and debrief was key to the holistic power of the work. This was extended to audiences as a part of the season, because they got to experience the whole audience, no matter what walk of life you came from. You got to live in that moment, share that time and space together, and feel that vibration as one. Power of being human and in the same place together and not through a screen. No offence to our online viewers. We understand you couldn't be here. That's Lil Avery again. We have Mitchella Hutchins, who I called on to manage this healing space. Kamranap. To Kambaran means to come together in Noongar language. So any up on the end of a Noongar word or title is the place of that. So this is the place to gather. We had a ceremony circle. We had a smoking in the middle of summer, but they trusted us with that because we're experts. And we had other arts activities around for people to release any of those triggers they may have had. And I think I took this photo while a show was on. We were there every night. I couldn't leave it. Had to stay with it. Now some images from the production and I will cease to speak. Enjoy. We receive standing ovations every night. Every night. The stage was elevated. If you were sitting in the first 4 or 5 rows, you were looking up at these great storytellers. It was magic. We got together a few years later. Here are just 2 images of getting the team back together, because we had developed the language a bit more since 2020. It's a reason why the book took an extra 4 years to publish or for us to release it. Okay, take it, go. Print it. Now it's gospel. Eek! So it was wonderful to get the family and the team back together for that. One last gift to you guys today to celebrate Shakespeare, the vessel used for us to reclaim our language and to be present with you today for this Shakespeare Memorial Lecture. I want to share with you here in person a little bit of the archival footage from the production, so you can hear the language in character. Please forgive the acoustics. They are tinny for any filmmakers in the room. This is a scene where the news comes to Macbeth that he is now the boss of Quarter Up, or receives that title for Quarter Up. Before I hit the spacebar, I should have checked with Julian about the audio. We'll see. Might be extra tinny. How's it going to work? It's going to come through the laptop. Microphone? Can I have the microphone? Thank you. Check, check, check. All right. Please don't stop breathing with excitement. There are two reminders for me as I watched that. I pushed hard for no surtitles. I believe that if Australians can travel to Europe or anywhere else in the world and take themselves to Little Old Theatre or the Barbican or anywhere in Berlin to see a show that isn't in English, they can sit through a 90-minute production in Little Old Perth to hear Noongar language. I also had deep conversations with my costume designer about honouring our storytellers, our knowledge holders, the people who don't dress like they know something, the people that don't dress like they're important. I didn't want any borrowed robes in our version because many of our people are so important. You see them every day on the street. You see them in community. Our people are humble. They didn't wear crowns per se, but they had markings and scars to hold them responsible and keep them accountable to their role in our community and to our people and to Budja. That is something that I made a creative choice with. I'm sure audience expected to see fantastic costumes. But for me, the hero was not the vision or the visual aspect of the production. The hero was our people reclaiming their mother tongue on stage to share a Scottish yarn about a king. I don't have an image of it here, but finally I just wanted to share that I've never really seen an Aboriginal person wear a crown. So the inspiration for the actual crown that Trevor is wearing as King Duncan comes from one of my favourite movies of all time, has absolutely nothing to do with Shakespeare. I'm just checking to see if there's one in the book. There's an image in the book. Has anyone ever heard of King Jaffe Joffer? Why are the darkest people in the room holding their giggles? King Jaffe Joffer is the king of Zamunda, coming to America. My favourite film of all time. If you get your hands on the copy of the book, you'll see a very close replica or remake of that crown. Just a funny pun in there to honour that. So many actors across the globe revere Shakespeare. We respected it. We respected it enough to do something really amazing with it. And I think I'll continue to pinch myself for all time and stay beautifully connected to the team that brought it to fruition so beautifully. I look forward to receiving everyone's feedback about the book, and hopefully I live long enough to see another version of Hecate on stage. Thank you. Want to do some Q&A?
Let's do some Q&A. Thank you so much to Kylie for sharing your process, your memories, and of course your language. We do have a little bit of space for some questions. I might put you back behind the microphone while I wander around with this. If anyone would like to ask a question, I'll just hand you the microphone.
I'll just say no questions too silly.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I thought it was fascinating. You've spoken about the language choices, the costume choices. Looking at that image there, the sort of movement choices seem very different to a conventional Shakespeare production. I'm wondering if you can speak about the way that people hold themselves on stage and the way that people move on stage and what your creative process was around that.
Great question. A lot of our communication is physical. Aboriginal people can have a conversation without words and can do that really well. And so that was a big part of honouring that inside the movement. But also because there's no surtitles, we needed to express. We needed this version to be as expressive as possible so that everyone could come on the journey with us. We knew that Shakespearean diehards would know the story already. We did put a synopsis in the program for everyone to read as well. But our community won't bother with that. They just want to come and see the story. I think we asked one of our elders that came and saw the show, did you know what's happening in the story? He said, yeah, a bunch of fellas are trying to kill each other. But the reason that this image is so striking is because the witches, I changed them and we called them the mischief makers. So there were 3 mischief makers and I based them on creatures that a lot of people might think are mythical, but we still know are real, and they're like little hairy men that live on Budja. They're tormentative. They do have connections to Noongar people at times, and they are workers for certain people at times. If you're still recording this and you put it online, my dad's going to flog me. So we needed them to flitter quite a bit and to be quite. They're hard to catch. Yeah. So this is one of the scenes where the mischief makers are coming in, and the hole in the centre of the stage was based on a ngama hole, a traditional ngama hole that we have, which is fresh water, but it became quite magical, like symbolic of a cauldron, I guess. And so that's why there's that big leap. And so the movement in it we wanted to honour through our traditional ceremonies and how that very early watercolour depiction of how our mob tell stories and hold ceremonies and move. Even though it's a still, you can get a sense from that. So this was honouring that historical part of the way we share stories. Yeah. Buddha, thanks for coming.
Question over here.
Of all the plays you've chosen for adaptation, why the Scottish play?
Wasn't my choice. I wanted to support Kyle J. Morrison ever so devotedly to really use it as a tool for language. He chose this work, and as a teenager he's always been drawn to Macbeth and wanted to do a Noongar version of Macbeth. He went through a pretty dark time in his life, and he's just always been drawn to that work and everything the work speaks to, the power and the greed and the moral compass, where that sits, how life is valued or not, the spiritual side of things, the lack of connection or manipulative connection. Personally, I wouldn't have chosen it, but I probably wouldn't have chosen a Shakespeare work at all. So it was very much a collaboration of trusting his choice, and with my deep love and passion and responsibility from my old people to keep language strong, we created that team. Kyle in Noongar language and Kylie in Noongar language are the same thing. It's boomerang. It's a similar name. It's Kyle, Kylie, Curly, Kylie. So we're both boomerangs. We either create music or hurt something. I know my mum jokes are really good, aren't they? So the majority of the time it was like 2 boomerangs making music and really creating something unique. I'm so glad it was Macbeth though, because it is a shorter work than the others. But yeah, I did chip away at it as much as I could to try and streamline it to the messaging that we wanted to serve, the language and the connection to Budja through Hecate.
Space for one more.
Oh, now everyone wants to ask things.
I'll be quick, I promise.
I'll try and be quick too.
You talk a lot about the trials and tribulations of production, which is so inspiring, as you reiterated very brief of you and your crew. My question to you is, what was the easiest part of the production? What came really naturally and organically to you?
Loving the team.
That was quick.
Because we are a very loving people. If we love you, we love you. With all of the truth. All of the truth in our sight, in our capacity to see into something else.
Yeah.
I don't know if I will be quick, this is not fully formed thought. When you are adapting Shakespeare for another form of storytelling and theatrical practice, where is the, Shakespeare is something that you said you try to revere and respect the text through a reference of Noongar storytelling and theatrical practice. Does that reverence ever present obstacle?
Yeah, I almost didn't get on the plane to fly here today to do this. Like, it's a Shakespeare memorial lecture and Shakespeare is so revered. He's the most lauded English writer. I don't know how the bloke was treated back in his time, but I think the thing that grounds me inside the reverence of Shakespeare, in sitting with the World Shakespeare team and the people that believed in what we were trying to achieve, is the truth of relationships and human connection that he wrote about inside the characters. It's really grounding yourself in what the messaging is, because you can revere the writer, but if he was alive today, I reckon he'd stand here and go, I'm an artist, I'm a bit like, I don't really know what to say, I'm a bit vulnerable, but like, read the text, get into the characters, hear the messaging. With any art, it's always about the messaging, but we revere the creator so much. It should be more about the gift they've given, what message is inside that. And so I find, I won't say comfort, I try to choose my English words very carefully these days, and my Noongar words, but I find grounding in that I'm human, he was human, spirit form now, but it's the connection in the story. It's the storytelling. He just has a very unique, famous, deadly, awesome way of telling his stories through beautiful, I think it's the most beautiful English in the world, Shakespearean text. I think it will always cause some kind of limit or restriction to anyone's lung capacity to try and reach that level. It was, I still pinch myself, I had to be extremely bold and brave and cut things and paste things over, and I'm so glad I had Kate Mulvaney as a dramaturg, to someone, wonderfully acclaimed, award-winning dramaturg and writer for stage, and performer herself, and she's played Lady Max, so she was a perfect person for me to run things by, and if I had not had her, I'm not sure that Hecate would be what it was. The whole team definitely helped to lift that. I wouldn't encourage anyone to adapt Shakespeare solo. I should have said that in the first place.
Do you mind?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind.
I'm just going to go right to the back.
Hi, sorry, my ignorance about the state of the Noongar language, but it seemed like that by the end of the last century there were very few native speakers. So, and you referred a couple of times to how you searched for vocabulary to try and rebuild the language. I'd just be interested a little bit. I know for some Indigenous languages there's quite a few dictionaries, but then perhaps from the elders is the best way of getting a wider range of words, and just what the different options you had for finding words to help with the translation. Thanks.
I have a wonderful husband named Clint Bracknell. And whilst he is not officially a linguist per se, he did his PhD on Noongar songs. He has not had a baby, so he's got this wonderful brain where he can retain information like superbly. It was a culmination of an incredible collection of records. I remember we were travelling through Germany just so he could go to the Black Forest. There's a university there in Bonn. We travelled there by train just to see these handwritten notes from Noongar Budja on our way to Denmark. So any time we would get word or an inkling or a notification or of any Noongar language or song, we would research it as deeply as we could, because inside this wonderful work of art, it's always been about the language restoration and reclamation. And it's never been about producing a book and so that it's done, you put it on your shelf, okay, it's achieved now. It's always about keeping it spoken and putting it inside people. So then we have to make sure that what we're putting inside the people is as accurate as possible. So many sleepless nights, talking to elders. We always have a senior person working with us on anything that we do, so that we have their oral history, their lived experience. Dr. Roma Yirra Winmar has been teaching Noongar language for more than 3 decades. Her brother was one of the founders of the All Noongar School in Perth. So we cover all bases at all times because we want to make sure we're getting access to everything we need to have access to get it accurate, and so that everyone feels the love. Can never please everyone, but if we can get most of them, then we're doing all right. Yeah.
Well, speaking of love, in Macbeth is not my topic, except...
There's heaps of it. He loves that power. He loves that grief.
And he begins to hate himself, but he loves his wife.
Yes.
I was just wondering, like, with that relationship, that profound relationship, and other things so iconic about that play's themes, what did the Shakespeare buffs in the audience and the Noongar people themselves and you see from the play that you've never seen before presented in the Noongar language? And not just the language from the start.
Oh. I don't think that I've made comparisons to be able to answer that question. It's a great question.
But the buffs, what did they think? Oh.
Well, not many of them have spoken to my face. A lot of people celebrated the work, and I was so overwhelmed by how many people celebrated the work. We knew that we weren't reaching for exceptionally high standard of performance per se in terms of what the expectation of Shakespearean theatre would be. I always told the team that the production is just the cherry on top, and the goal here is to reclaim your language so that you can storytell with your mother tongue. What I loved in particular was the setting inside that theatre. We had actors doing bird calls and setting the scene to that backdrop of the trees. So whilst the backdrop's flat, the ambience and the life sprung out of every old floorboard, out of every creak in the seats in the auditorium, bounced off the old walls and the lighting rigs and the many shows that had been there in the past. I had numerous people come out of the theatre and say, I've never experienced anything like that in my life here. or anywhere. I've never felt anything like that. I don't really know how to. I was working at Perth Festival at the time as an artistic associate, and I had staff emailing me saying, I saw the show last night, it was so incredible, I really don't know how to express what I'm feeling about it. It's good, but I've never felt that before. Because hearing it in Noongar forces them without surtitles to have that crutch, to have that first language aid where I didn't want them focusing on Roman script. I wanted them focusing on the storytellers and feeling that vibration. And I knew that many of them hadn't ever felt that before. So I was kind of expecting that response, but not in the ways that it came in. So I don't have a comparison, kind of in that way, but there are lots of things that I'll probably think about in 2 hours and go, I should have said that. Yeah.
Well, might I just mention that you were telling us about the mischief makers, people who know
Yes.
Macbeth really well will know that the witches
Yeah.
are not called witches. They're never called witches.
No.
They're the
And even like,
sisters, and so what you may have done is refined things
Yeah.
that were originally there that people had forgotten.
I mean, the woods of Dunsinane, for example, I had them bring in bushes, and they were bashing the drums, coming in with the symbolically for us in that Shakespearean text was the woods of Dunsinane. So there were links that we had in there that the bus loved. So coming back to me now.
Perhaps we'll try and make this the last question.
I was interested in what happened after the play and how the language lived on in the people that not only learned the play but learned their language there, and also the effect that it had for non-Indigenous audiences and their respect for your culture from watching the play and hearing your language.
So many people were inspired. So many people were rocked. There's a Noongar filmmaker by the name of Brooke Collard who saw it and just wants to work on more language stuff. There are so many non-Noongar people who have signed up for Noongar classes with my cousin Dylan Collard after that. It has inspired, and that's what all great art should do. And we're all very proud of the impact that it has had to seed plant with people to embrace the original language of that place, because it is the only language that our ancestors who are buried in that ground know. And we are healing our town, and we are healing our arts communities and our space so that future generations can connect more to the place they call home. Yeah, so huge impact in many, many ways. I still get stopped in the street, people to say, I absolutely loved Hecate. It's still, even theatre makers are like, it's the bar for me now. And I get really overwhelmed and embarrassed because it's not what we were trying to achieve, It's not about that, it's about restoration of language. It's just had that ripple effect. I think when Kyle set out to do, his very words were, Shakespeare has a first folio, let's create a Noongar first folio. So we've got one. And I kind of said that I'm retiring now, someone else can do the next one. It's really, it's a load. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It makes it hard to do a lecture and highlight some of the things that will resonate with all of you wonderful people from different walks of life. I want to make sure there's something in there, but to go back to the roots of it and not just celebrating, oh, it's a Shakespeare adaptation, all in Noongar language, how wonderful. It's like, oh my gosh, if you were only there with us for the whole 10 years. Cradling people, convincing them to stay. Actors were throwing scripts on the ground. I mean, that happens anyway, I think, in most English productions, but it's a massive investment. Very proud of it. And yeah, like I said, it'd be great to see a production of it. I'd actually love to see a non-Noongar cast try and learn a new language from scratch so that they can improvise it on stage and be as deadly as they need to be and perform it every night. It's daunting, incredibly daunting. But this is, for me, restoring language in our people, but restoring the brilliance in which our people need to hold their heads high on their own country every day and not feel uneasy, you know? So I hope all of you got something. I really don't want you to walk out of here and go, oh, that was a waste of an hour of my life, I can't get that back. Sometimes we do, but often some questions that come through are like, you know, people ask how they can engage, and I always say, if you see any Aboriginal people in your neighbourhood or in town, just stop and have a yarn, say hello, or just smile, just get to know your community. You know, it's not about changing the world, it's about working in your own community, on your street. How many people do you know on your own street that you talk to? It's where it starts. It's that old cliche, you know, art is life. Life is art, that's what we are. We're all pretty magical. I believe there's a Shakespeare quote about that. That we are but stars of something. But this will have a ripple effect for all time, just like Shakespeare's works will. And yeah, it's a pinch me moment.